Welcome to the EcoCampus guide to measuring your Scope 3 business travel carbon dioxide emissions. Unlike commuter travel, business travel emissions have been recommended as mandatory. Providing you have the correct data, you can use Carbon Manager to report on all your business travel emissions. The data collected will vary between organisations, and there are a number of sources you can get information from. Finance or accounting will be able to help you tell whether the vehicles are owned, so whether they are Scope 1 or Scope 3. They will also have further information on travel expenditure, for example, grey fleet data. Your fuel card provider may be able to help provide information on spend, petrol type, litres taken and possibly the vehicle type in addition to mileage, whilst your car hire supplier may also be able to provide similar information. Central travel booking agencies may have information on trains or flights booked. You may also have information on litres of petrol purchased. This is considered primary data and is the most accurate. So here we have some imaginary data from the fictitious Wessex University for the academic year 2009 to 2010. Let's start with air travel. As you can see, there are three types of travel. Domestic, which is all UK flights, short haul, which are all round-trip journeys of less than 3,700 kilometres, and long-haul flights, which are all round-trip journeys greater than 3,700 kilometres, assuming that all travel is economy class. Remember to apply the flight distance uplift factor and the radiative forcing uplift factor to the mileage. Let's move on to fleet data. You might have data on either the fuel type and litres taken or the expenditure. The fuel type and litres is by far the most accurate combination to have and is considered primary data. You can report this in Carbon Manager providing the fleet is not owned by the university. If it is, then it is considered Scope 1 emissions. Where just the expenditure is known, you will be able to work out with reasonable certainty the number of litres. You can divide the total expenditure by the average price per litre of petrol or diesel. Information on the average petrol or diesel prices can be found on the AA website. You can split rail data into domestic and international, which is essentially UK and Eurostar. For domestic distances between stations, you can use the Transport Direct website. The grey fleet is a little more complicated than the other two, although not by much. Providing you know the car type, engine size, expenditure, rate or rates per mile, you will be able to calculate the total mileage. Simply divide the total expenditure by the rate per mile to calculate the mileage. Be careful to take into account of any secondary rates too. To report on business travel through Carbon Manager, you will need to set up a new site called HEFCE Scope 3 Business Travel. This is because for reporting purposes, business travel is applicable to the whole university rather than an individual building, as is the case with water and waste. Here's how to do it. From the home screen, or wherever you are in the application, click Tools and ensure you are on the Site Manager screen. Move down to the bottom right hand side of the screen and click Create Site. Type into the site name HEFCE Scope 3 Business Travel or something else that you feel is appropriate. For example, your university's name and then HEFCE Scope 3 Business Travel. You can then fill out the other fields in address 1 and 2, etc. with not applicable. You may also want to leave yourself a note. This will advise that the site is only to be used for the Scope 3 reporting purposes. Finally, click Save. As you can see, the new site has been created and is here. The next step is to then create the actual scope. You should call this the same name as your site, so HEFCE Scope 3 Business Travel. The carbon sources included within the scope will depend on the data you have. Here's how to set the scope up. From the Tools menu, click the Energy Scope Editor button. Next, click Create Custom Energy Scope on the right-hand side of the screen. Type in HEFCE Scope 3 Business Travel in the field provided. You should then select the transport by clicking the tick box next to the relevant transport method. I have pre-sorted these options. To arrange transport type alphabetically by category or by name, click the column heading. Obviously, you may not have all these transport methods to report on. Finally, click Create Scope. You are now ready to enter your data. Click the Data Manager button at the top of the screen and select the HEFCE Scope 3 Business Travel Scope from the Carbon Sources menu. Select the transport option or fuel type for which you have the data. For example, diesel, retail station, biofuel blend. Select the HEFCE Scope 3 Business Travel site from the Site drop-down list at the far right-hand side, and then click the pen icon to start entering your data. You should also ensure that you have the correct year selected, and you should divide any yearly data by 12 to get a monthly average and enter this from the start to the end of the relevant academic year. You should also ensure you have the correct units selected. Finally, click Save once you have entered your data.